All right, guys, let's keep diving in here. So, really looking at how hydration is going to impact our HRV. And so, the first thing that we need to really take a look at here, I'm going to just share my screen, is the impact of water on our body. There's two things, well, three things that if we take a look at it, if we don't get them, we will die: sleep, food, and water. So it obviously has a big factor, and it is going to play a big part in HRV, wellness, health, energy optimization, resiliency. So if we take a look at it, 75% of our body is made of water. Okay, 75% of our entire body. Now, when we come back to impact on HRV, what is HRV impacted by? Well, our brain is going to tell our heart to function and pump, and it's going to also have an impact of how we're breathing in our lungs. Guess what? These three major organs are made up of 85% water. So we can now start to see the correlation. If we are just 1% dehydrated, why it's going to send our HRV into a downward trend? Simply because, hey, our heart is going to have to work harder. It's going to have to beat more frequent to get that viscosity of that blood through at a greater rate. And because of that, the red blood cells that are creating oxygen to the body and the brain and the lungs, they're not going to be as higher quantity either. So that is why hydration is so important. You see it on Gatorade commercials all the time. 1% drop in 1% drop in overall water level within the body creates dehydration. It's that small. So making sure that we're getting half our body weight in ounces per day is super, super important. I do not leave without my water bottle. I have this with me all the time. I actually have two going right now. Okay. This is a 40-ounce water bottle. I know that for my weight, I need to have 2.5 of these a day. This guy right here is a 20-ounce water bottle. So I have two of these, one of these, and away I go. That is how, and again, I just know that that's what I have to do. Every time that we start drinking glasses of water throughout the day, or plastic bottles, not to mention that it's not good for the environment, it's hard for us to keep track. It's hard for us to know, oh, I know that I hit where I needed to hit. So for example, for myself, being 180 pounds, I know that I need 90 ounces every single day. Okay, straight up. It's either a yes or no. Did I do it or did I not? It's a very simple action step. So take your weight wherever you are right now, divide it by 2. That's the amount of water you need in a given day. Now, is it just water that we need? No. Here's where we can start to even level up even deeper. And just like anything, it's like a pyramid. One, let's just get half our body weight in ounces in. If we're not doing that and we're not looking after the base of the pyramid, then all this stuff up here doesn't matter because it's going to be built on sand. So let's make sure that the key, we get half our body weight, and then let's worry about what happens up here. But in case you're wondering, and I'm going to tell you anyways, what does this stuff up here consist of? Okay, couple things. Temperature. The ideal temperature for water is between 50 and 65 degrees. Oh, and looks like my pen died. Now, being between 50 and 65 degrees, we need to know why. Why is that an optimal number? Well, when we take water into our gut, if it is freezing cold at like 35, 40, 45 degrees, think about that. It's water going into our body that we now have to warm up. It's going into the gut, and it's literally freezing the aspects around us because our body temperature is typically 97 degrees. And we're putting something in that is so cold, it's going to create, again, it doesn't burn more calories. It actually creates indigestion. It creates an inability to break down all the different parts that we're trying to pull from the water, like the electrolytes that we talk about. And so that is why that temperature is so key. So 50 to 65 degrees, it's basically like tap water. Throw an ice cube or two in there, but your ice cube should not live in your water. Because if they're living in it, the temperature is obviously a lot closer to that 38, 39, 40, 42 degrees. Now, I'm not asking you to put a thermometer in, but just know that if you're putting water into your bottle out of the tap, out of the fridge, out of the filter, it's going to be somewhere around there. Now, second thing is the alkalinity. Okay, now, Justin, what does that mean? pH level. So on the pH scale, it goes from 1 to 14. Right in the middle, 7 is neutral. We want our water to be somewhere between 7.2 and 8.5 on the pH scale. That is going to create optimal alkalinity because our body is acidic. Our stomach is acidic. And we want to make sure that we can create alkalinity for increased absorption of those electrolytes. So again, we can create filters. We have filters that we can put on our taps, filters we can put on our fridges, Brita filters that can actually change the pH, but make sure you look and you can actually set the pH of your water. Something, again, all the different pHs have a certain purpose. If you're looking at cleaning your windows, you want it to be much more alkaline. If you're washing off your fruits, you want it to be much more acidic. So you're able to change the pH. And I forget the filter. I think it's called Genie filter, but you can literally set the pH that you want it to, and then it'll actually start coming out that way. So just know, I mean, if you go and look, Smart Water, I know has a little bit of alkalized water, but alkaline water is going to be the best for absorption. The last thing we want to look at is electrolytes. Okay. Now, the big ones, sodium, ones we've all heard before, potassium, magnesium. Really, really important. Okay. And ideally, we have these in a 10 to 1 ratio. So whether you're using a product like Protect, Protekt, so whether you're looking at Protect, whether you're looking at Noon, Nuun, or you're looking at the right stuff, they all have a ratio of 10 to 1. Because that, again, is what our sweat is made of. That is what we need in terms of the optimal ratio to optimize our body in terms of electrolytes and what we lose over the course of the day. So that is super, super important. And the other thing I want to be clear on here, guys, is when you look at this, if we don't have the electrolytes in our body that are appropriate, if you've gone through the sleep talk that I did, you remember me talking about how magnesium is so important. It does over 400 processes in the body. It's one of the first things, one of the first hormones that's pulled from the body, and one of the first nutrients that's pulled from the body when it's trying to combat stress. And it's also one of the key ingredients to the release and formation of melatonin, which helps us sleep. So if we're magnesium deficient, we're going to have a real hard time sleeping. So making sure that we are adding something to our water, that it's not just plain water all the time. And it's none of this sugary stuff. It's none of these Mios or Crystal Light or Gatorade, but simply water, and something that is focused specifically on enhancing that water through simple sodium, potassium, magnesium utilizations. So hydration, super important in making sure that that HRV is optimized. If we are not hitting half our body weight in ounces, that's our first step. First step. And once we get into that habit of carrying that water bottle around, making sure that we have it at any given point in time, and really doing exactly what we need it to do, that's when we can start focusing on things a little bit higher up the pyramid, like the temperature, the alkalinity, and the electrolyte mixtures. Now, a constant question I get asked, and it has to do 100% with hydration, is alcohol and caffeine. Now, I know we all love our coffee and we all love our margaritas on Taco Tuesday, but they do have a major impact on us, and they have a major impact on HRV. From an alcohol standpoint, this is probably the number one thing. You'll see it back in a couple of pieces of content I did. One of the number one things that you can do to increase your HRV is minimize alcohol content. Simply because what does alcohol do? It increases, let's just go increase resting heart rate, increase blood pressure, and decrease mental acuity. Basically, what are we talking about here? It's a stress response. It literally mimics a stress response in the body. And what do we know about stress? It's determined through HRV. And when we have a lot of stress on our body, it decreases it. So it's one of the big things along with sleep that has a major impact on our HRV. Sleep, alcohol, and sunlight exposure. Probably the three things that can regulate and help with our HRV numbers. But when it comes to hydration, alcohol really dehydrates us. It's a diuretic. Same thing as caffeine. They're going to make us pee. They're going to make us really urinate a lot of the micronutrients that we have in our body. And if you learn in the nutrition component, we really talk about micronutrient deficiency causes chronic cravings. So this is how everything starts to cycle and really kind of come together. When we look at alcohol, for every drink that we have, whether it's wine, whether it's a mixed drink, whether it's beer, whatever it may be, we need to add an extra 8 ounces of water. So going off what we spoke about previously, knowing that we need half our body weight in ounces as the base of that pyramid, okay, and really looking after it, we need to add 8 ounces on top of half of our body weight for every single drink that we have. And what that's going to do is it's going to help us drink less, because if we're going beverage, 8-ounce glass of water, beverage, 8-ounce glass of water, beverage, 8-ounce glass of water, it's going to ultimately take up a little bit more time, and we're not going to just habitually start throwing alcoholic beverages back. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, it's going to make sure that it helps us flush out some of the toxicity that alcohol creates in our body. And three, it's going to be hydrating us at the same time, which will help eliminate some of the hangover that we might get the next day, that groggy feeling. Okay, help us get into that deeper stage of sleep, even though drinking hinders that sometimes. So that's number one with alcohol, is making sure we're adding at least 8 ounces in between, and we're going at a 1-to-1 ratio. Okay, now with caffeine actually stays in our system for the half-life. Okay, so the half-life of caffeine is anywhere from 8 to 10 hours in a regular person. So that means if I have 100 milligrams of caffeine at noon, I'm going to have 50 milligrams of caffeine in my body between 8 and 10 p.m. So it's no wonder that people that are very sensitive to caffeine, which we can figure out your caffeine sensitivity through a DNA test, which is why we do that with all of our clients, we can ultimately determine how long caffeine is going to stay in your body. For somebody who it's really sensitive for, it's going to be probably closer to 10 hours. Somebody who it's not as sensitive for, it's going to be somewhere 8, maybe a little bit less. But we now know, hey, we need to put a caffeine curfew on. And that caffeine curfew is 10 a.m. to 12 noon. And anything over and above that, anything later, is going to cause sleep issues. And it may not be that you have trouble falling asleep. You're like, hey, Justin, I sleep fine. Don't bore me with this nonsense. No, it's the quality of the sleep. And we now know the difference between sleep quality and sleep quantity if we go watch that sleep video. Okay, so knowing that we need to put a caffeine curfew on. And again, for every 1 cup of coffee, and that's not a Venti Grande or whatever it is at Starbucks, it's a regular normal 250 milliliter cup of coffee, we need to have another 8 ounces of water, because it's a diuretic. It's going to make us just pee out all the nutrients within our body. Everything we're taking in, it's not going to be absorbed. It's just going to go through us. So making sure that if we have this at 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m., that we have 8 ounces of water again added to our half our body weight in ounces. And that's a way in which we can limit these, but still dabble in them if it's something that we want to be a part of, while making sure that we have our hydration looked after.